Hi guys, Trevor Swenson from Through the Darkness. My journey, story with trauma and stressor disorder, PTSD. Wanted to talk to you about a quick topic today that helped me. And the title or the premise of today's video is Mad is easy, sad is hard. And one thing you may want to consider doing with your therapist or your healthcare provider or somebody that you love is you start to realize that the anger that you experience, or I started to recognize that the anger that I experienced with trauma and stressor disorder was really masking the true emotion, which was sorrow and grief, all tied to loss. Things are different now for me, and there are very specific, tangible things that were lost in my journey with trauma and stressor disorder. And if I ask you the question, is it good to stuff your grief, or do you think it would be more healthy to get your grief process going and be able to process all of the grief and sorrow that you have inside of you because of unresolved trauma or diagnosed trauma? And I found for myself that getting it out there and grieving it, like really actually grieving it versus being insanely angry about it, is good. It gave me a starting point to begin healing and to begin recovery. But I had to name specifically what I was grieving. And just to give you a few examples for myself personally, so maybe you have a way to start the conversation with a psychotherapist on talking about what it is exactly that you're grieving that's covered up in intense anger and resentment and bitterness. Maybe it'll help you if I put mine out there, put some of mine out there. I actually have a list of 23 things that were lost, taken from me, different, that I had to adjust to. Number one, for instance, is financially. This has cost my family significantly going through this, whether it be my not being able to work at this point or other financial losses that were incurred because of this disorder. It's very real to me. And being a professional, I was very driven by that. And so I needed to grieve the actual loss of that. I had to grieve the loss of my health. I had to grieve the fact that I was uh, a diabetic that had to work very, very hard to overcome the diabetes that was caused by my alcoholism, that was triggered by trauma and stressor disorder. I had to grieve the loss of being very physically fit and very healthy on paper. That meant something to me, to be very, very healthy. The loss of relationships, especially if your trauma and stressor disorder involves people of any walk of life, there are going to be most likely loss of relationships through the trauma and stressor disorder. Some of them are going to be losses that you have to endure for your own health, whether it be a terrible relationship, an abusive relationship that you were in, or the loss of contact with somebody that at one time was a safe person is no longer a safe person for your own well-being and health, whatever it might be. It may be a divorce that came because of your trauma and stressor disorder. I hope that isn't the case, but that is a very real loss that needs to be grieved. Activities. There are a lot of things that I can't do anymore at this particular point in my recovery and my healing, and I have to accept that as the new me and to be okay with that. And with that comes a very real sense of being angry, but again, under that anger is the real thing that needs to be dealt with, which is the loss of the ability to thoroughly enjoy specific things in life that I used to enjoy so much that I no longer enjoy. That's real grief. That is something that used to bring you joy is now not joyful. That is something to grieve over and to face head on. There will be other things I know for myself in the future that become joyful, but the loss of those things was very difficult. One of the biggest things for me, the thing I'm most angry about most quickly, that I have to really be cautious about, is the loss of quality of life. My quality of life is completely different now than it was before trauma and stressor disorder. Completely different. And I need to grieve that. And I can tell you that it needs to be grieved by people around you as well. Like my wife, for instance. It's a huge loss for a spouse or for the people around you to lose the person that they once know and to readjust to the new person that you are becoming or being made into. And again, I want to tell you that I truly believe that all things work together for the good for those that love God, and that the new person that is going to come from trauma and stressor disorder in me, I believe every single day is going to be good. That all things, all of the bad things, all of the losses, all of the grief, all of the suffering are going to work together for good. And I ask you to latch onto that. And if you haven't found that yet, I ask you to chase after that. Because I'll tell you right now, no matter where you are in your walk with God, He is chasing after you. Some of you just need to stop and let Him catch up, because He wants you. He wants to love on you. He wants to show you His goodness through the process of the grind and the pain and the suffering. He wants that for you. Another one of my losses I had to grieve was the professional loss. I had a very, very good, successful career. I was very good at what I did, and I lost that. And that is a very real loss that I need to grieve out. I need to stop being so damn angry about everything, and I need to realize that it's my body trying to grieve those losses. And grief is a process. And I want to go through a grief cycle with you. And I will tell you that one of the things that helped me immensely was part of my therapy was seeing a grief counselor, specifically somebody who was trained in grief, because the anger is masking grief. And I needed to deal with everything that had been lost in my journey with trauma and stressor disorder. All trauma and all unresolved trauma takes something from you. And the step of faith is believing that it will be replaced with something good, if not even better than before. And I believe that for you, and I believe that for me, and I believe that for my family. And you can see from my discussion, hopefully through these videos, that faith is something that is going to be a hole in you, a specific hole that can only be filled with one thing, and that's a relationship with your Creator, a relationship with Christ, accepting Christ and allowing Him to steer your ship and to take over where trauma left off. Passions in life. I will tell you that there were passions in life that were taken away from me because of the trauma and stressor disorder. I don't understand how that works, but they were. There are just things that I'm not passionate about anymore. I will tell you that I'm an outdoorsman. I've said that before, and there are things that I just am not excited about anymore, and it crushes me. And my initial reaction is to be extremely angry about what trauma and stressor disorder has done to me and my family, but it's about grief. my wife and I are finding out it's all about grief. It's about grieving it out. It's about going through the mourning process of what you've lost. You may have had a loss of calmness and safety. That is something that manifests itself in me. That is very difficult to process, and I need to mourn it out, grieve it out with a professional, whether that be a grief counselor or a counselor, and I mean grieve it out. And if it means tears, like it has been for me, and agony, like it has been for me, just know that there is purpose in the pain and that there is a process in the grind that is taking place. It may be your loss of control. Trauma and stressor disorder really gives you an overwhelming sense of loss of control. You feel like you are being controlled now by a disorder, and I had to grieve that. I'm a different person now. But I will tell you that people around me, doctors included, see something in me that has changed for the better. And this YouTube channel is one of the things that I am so passionate about, being something good that has come from my journey that has been so challenging and so painful and so full of loss. It is being replaced already through this channel, through purpose. Maybe it's a loss of confidence. And for me, for instance, maybe that confidence needed to be put into check. And is PTSD the most enjoyable way for it to be put back into check? I would say not. But the ultimate humility that comes from something like this, going through something like trauma and stressor disorder, has long-lasting positive effects. So I just wanted to do a quick video today on write it down. Write it down with somebody. Write your grief down. Write what you've lost down, and allow yourself to go through the grieving process and to mourn with a professional, with a grief counselor. And I really hope that it's a part of the healing process, like it has been for me and for my family, to recognize that the anger, the resentment, the bitterness are really just covering up what the real thing that needs to be dealt with, which is the grief part of it. So whether it be physical, emotional, psychological, whatever the loss is, it's okay to grieve those losses. Do it with a professional. Do it in a healthy manner. Start the process, start the rebuilding process to that person that you're being made into. And always remember, all things work out for the good. It doesn't say all things are good. It says all things will work out for the good for those who love him. And I challenge you to make that choice in your life as well. Again, this is Trevor Swenson for Through the Darkness. I ask you to click and subscribe, hit the notification bell, forward this on to somebody that might be struggling with unresolved trauma. Grieve those things. Allow the grief cycle, allow the suffering to bring perseverance, and the perseverance to build character, and the character to build hope in your journey. I can't wait to see you next time. Thanks for being with me.